Live from WBFF TV in Baltimore, this is breaking news.
Fox 45 begins with breaking news. A verdict is in less than a day after a jury received the perjury case of Marilyn Mosby. The jury weighing the fate of the former city state's attorney as prosecutors say she lied when she used a COVID loophole to tap into the city's retirement account.
This is video just into our newsroom showing Marilyn Mosby walking into the courtroom. We expect the jury to deliver their verdict any moment now. They said it would be coming around 4 p.m. today. Marilyn Mosby yesterday made the decision not to take the stand in the trial.
Now, once again, you are seeing video of Marilyn Mosby headed into the Greenbelt courtroom. That's in Prince George's County. This is just moments ago that we received this video from our crews down there, which is, of course, our photographer, Mackenzie Frost, who's inside the courtroom right now. Well, thank you for joining us at 4 o'clock. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. We got word just about an hour ago that the jury has reached a verdict, and we expect that to be read any moment now. As we said, we have attorney Kurt Nachman standing by to give us some live analysis of what might be going on with that jury. We also have a camera outside the courthouse in Greenbelt. Our Mackenzie Frost is inside the courtroom. She'll join us live as soon as the verdict is read.
That's right. Let's bring in attorney Kurt Nachman right now. So Kurt, set the stage for the different outcomes. And Mary and I, when we spoke with you yesterday, you were talking about what the length of time of deliberations would tell us about a possible verdict.
Yeah, so typically the length of time, a shorter period of time, a very short period of time is great for the defense. Kind of a in-between period of time, meaning like greater than 1 hour but less than 1 day, is generally a very good sign for the prosecution. And the longer, obviously, the deliberations drag on, the better it's going to be for the defense. So right now we're looking at sort of a medium time frame, which would tend toward lean towards a government verdict in this case.
Yeah, it looks like a careful jury took the day, considered the evidence. Kurt, we know the maximum sentence is 5 years for each of these two charges. If she is found guilty, how much time would you expect her to get?
Well, the first thing her attorneys are going to do is file for an appeal. She has an automatic right to appeal from any conviction after a jury trial, which you don't have the automatic right to appeal from a plea. They're going to schedule a sentencing date, and the judge is going to order what's called a pre-sentence investigation to be conducted by an investigator. The government is going to prepare a sentencing memorandum where they justify their reasons asking for their sentence. The defense is going to do the same. And then the judge is going to sit down, look at the facts and circumstances, look at Ms. Mosby's background, look at the nature and circumstances of the charges, and within the sentencing guidelines, going to make a decision as to what her sentence is going to be. If you look historically at some of the other similar high-profile cases involving individuals that have gone through the Maryland federal court system, you have former Police Commissioner D'Souza, who got 1 year and a day on a tax fraud case. That was a plea. You have former Commissioner Ed Norris, who got 6 months on mortgage fraud charges, similar to the charges that Ms. Mosby has yet to face. He got 6 months. That was a plea. You have Catherine Pugh, who had a 3-year sentence. That was also a plea. One of the things you need to remember is that in the federal system, you get what's called a downward departure of 3 points for accepting responsibility in your case. So I would expect a sentence that involves jail time. Ultimately, the judge is going to get to make the decision. The judge has made some conservative rulings so far in terms of severing the cases, in terms of sort of excluding evidence, giving all the opportunities to the defense. I would expect a judge who's on the bench and made similar conservative rulings to stay within the sentencing guidelines, to stay within the areas in which Congress has recommended. And so obviously the lawyers involved would calculate those guidelines, but they're going to end up somewhere between, a year, 18 months and 24 months in that neighborhood.
Yeah, Kurt, we appreciate mentioning Catherine Pugh, Ed Norris, Daryl D'Souza, and others in Baltimore who have faced federal prosecution. Here's a question for you. Can the jury find Ms. Mosby guilty on one
be read at 4 o'clock today. We just saw a few tweets coming out of the courtroom that the judge is now in the courtroom, so we're expecting it fairly soon. You know how these things go in the courtroom. Tell us what will happen in the next few moments.
So there's going to be a slip of paper that's handed up to the courtroom clerk. The courtroom clerk is going to review it, make sure it has the foreperson's signature on it. She's going to hand it up to the judge. And the judge is going to ask the foreperson of the jury, you know, Madam or Mr. Foreperson, have you reached a verdict in this case? And they're going to acknowledge yes. And who shall speak for you? And then the foreperson will announce the verdict publicly. You can very easily, as a practicing lawyer, tell how your case is going to go. Usually it's by eye contact from the jurors or generally
All right,
lack.
Kurt, we're going to just interrupt for a second because the verdict is in, and we are told that Marilyn Mosby has been found guilty of perjury, the 2 counts of perjury.
Yeah. Kurt, you want to expand on that? What are your thoughts right now hearing that?
Again, it's sort of some of the things I said yesterday on the show. The audio call of her own voice asking for how to obtain the money is pretty significant. And I thought that was probably the biggest, most damaging piece of evidence that the government had against her. And now the problem that Ms. Mosby is in is that the government is really very much in the driver's seat for the other case, which is the much easier case to prove against her. And so, they're really going to get to be able to dictate how things move from here forward, whereas Ms. Mosby may have been more or less as the defendant in the driver's seat before.
Hey, Kurt, and let's think about that for a second, because we don't have a date with that, although I think maybe one of our reporters is coming out. What's the likelihood the government could go to Ms. Mosby and say, hey, look, let's stop the bleeding, so to speak, where it is right now? We're ready to cut a deal with you, if that would even happen. What are your thoughts about that? Is that a possibility? And you save the taxpayers money in the process.
Maybe. I don't think so.
No, you're going to try her at this point.
They're going to push forward, and they could offer a plea deal that offers, maybe concurrent time, which means time that runs at the same time. But they're not going to be giving away the farm at this point, by any stretch of the imagination.
And again, we saw Mackenzie Frost. She's just getting mic'd up, and she's been in the courtroom, so we'll go to her in just a second. But Kurt, real quickly, just in case people are joining us, the sentence for this guilty perjury charge is, the range is what?
It's a maximum penalty of 5 years, as you stated previously, but I think that she's going to be looking at somewhere between, 12 months and 24 months. Based on what her sentencing guidelines calculations come out to, which is a formula that the federal government has generated through Congress and the Sentencing Guideline Commission to sort of have uniform sentencing throughout the United States. So they put a bunch of information in, and then it's going to spit out a range of numbers, and then the judge is going to make a decision, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 24 months.
Interesting. And Kurt, the defense's argument here was they were twofold. First, they were talking about the fact that this was...
I can hear Kurt on Zoom.
This was Mackenzie, can you hear us?
We can hear you, Mackenzie, if you're ready.
Can you hear us, Mackenzie? If you can, please go ahead. The verdict is read. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so we just heard from the verdict was read in. The jury signaled that they had reached a verdict around 2:30, 2:45. We got word that there was something coming around 3 o'clock, and that we did learn that there would be a verdict that was read at 4 o'clock. So once everyone came inside, we saw Marilyn Mosby walk in shortly before 4 o'clock. She came inside, everyone sat down, then the jury was brought in, and on both counts, one by one, the jury read the verdict to the judge and said that they found her guilty on both perjury charges. Now, if we go back and look at this case, we know that this started on Monday. Opening statements started. We had a couple witnesses. It was a much shorter trial than originally expected and anticipated. So today, what is Thursday now, we know that she has been found guilty. We expect her to come out, potentially answer some questions. Throughout this entire trial, she has remained pretty quiet, not answering questions from the media. We hope we can ask ask her defense attorney some questions as well if and when everybody does come outside. Remember, Marilyn Mosby opted not to take the stand yesterday. That was the big question heading into yesterday, was that would she take the stand? She made the decision not to do so, and it came after prosecutors warned her that if she did take the stand, that they would ask her about previous tax deductions and questionable things that may or may not lead to more charges down the road. So now we know she's not taking the stand here, but remember that this isn't over because she is still facing 2 more charges for the mortgage fraud. That trial has yet to be scheduled. Mary and Kai, we're expecting to potentially learn more about the next steps. We just got the verdict moments ago, and hopefully I'll be able to share more information in a little bit.
Before we let you go, can we at least talk about, was there any reaction from anyone in the courtroom? Marilyn Mosby, her attorneys, any members of the jury?
So I was actually in the media overflow room. I wasn't in the actual courtroom when the verdict was read, so I could tweet it and make sure that I was able to get the information out to everybody as soon as possible. But from what I saw, it didn't look like there was too much reaction. It looks like we just have some more media people coming out right now, so just want to keep an eye on who's coming out. But as far as reaction, the judge was very clear. She warned everybody before the verdict was read. She told everyone to not have any reaction, whether it was from the defendant or anyone in the courtroom at all. So really no reaction right now.
And Mackenzie, we know as well, and you mentioned this, that from a procedural standpoint, that Ms. Mosby's defense team moved for a complete dismissal of all charges. Kurt Nachman said this was strategic. This was so they could set up a process for appeal. I know it's early. I know you left the overflow room, but have you heard anything about this second case in appeal so far?
Nothing about an appeal yet. We know that there were some conversations about the mortgage fraud trial during this conversation when we're talking about the perjury trial. The prosecution was warned not to mention very much about the mortgage fraud. We don't have a date for that next trial yet. So we don't have a date for the trial. We don't have a date for a potential appeal filing or even when sentencing. So even though we do have a verdict now, there are still a lot of unanswered questions about what comes next as this continues to unfold.
All right, Mackenzie Frost live outside the courthouse in Greenbelt with a guilty verdict for Marilyn Mosby tonight, 2 counts of perjury. Mackenzie, thank you.
Yeah.
And you can trust Fox 45 News to bring you the very latest. We'll have more live coverage throughout the evening and online at foxbaltimore.com.
Well, also breaking right now, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin will not run for re-election in 2024. His decision is monumental for the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Manchin's departure creates an opportunity for the GOP to pick up a Senate seat. Democrats currently hold 51 seats to the GOP's 49. 2024 was already shaping up to be a tough election cycle for Senate Democrats. The party will be forced to defend 23 seats compared to just 10 seats for Republicans. And here's what is making news around the state today. 2 people had to be cut out of a car this morning in Montgomery County after a crash. Take a look at the chopper video. This is the scene on I-270. You can see the top of the car cut off as rescuers extricated the people. We understand 2 people were inside that vehicle. It was the only car involved in that crash, so a single car crash there. The people are in the hospital being treated for their injuries.
A man is shot this morning in Baltimore County. This happened at a home right by Stansbury Point. Baltimore County Police are only revealing a man was shot and is in the hospital. There's no word on that person's condition or what led to the shooting. 3 people are hurt after a fight this morning inside of a school in North Baltimore. This happened at the Academy for College and Career Exploration. Now, we understand 4 students were involved. One of them, a 15-year-old, was apparently armed with a knife. 2 of the students suffered minor injuries, as well as a teacher who tried to intervene. The building was on a brief lockdown.
Fox 45 News has learned the identities of the Baltimore officers involved in that deadly shooting of a man earlier this week.
Officials also revealed the 26-year-old killed in Southeast Baltimore was wearing an ankle monitor at the time of the incident.
Alexa Ashwell joins us live in studio with the latest on the investigation. Alexa?
Kai and Mary, the Attorney General's office is handling the investigation into the actions of the officers. Tonight, those officers and the suspect officially identified as this investigation continues. 27-year-old Hunter Jessup shot and killed by police after investigators say he pointed a gun at them during an encounter here on Wilkins Avenue in Southwest Baltimore, November 7th. Tonight, the Attorney General's office identifying those officers as Officer William Healy, Officer Brittany Routh, Officer Justin Oliva, and Officer Brandon Colombo.
They warned the individual multiple times. They yelled to the individual multiple times to drop his weapon, drop his weapon.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley says the officers were part of the department's district action team and had approached Jessup while performing proactive patrol.
They saw something that made them believe that he was armed.
Jessup, Worley says, ran from the officers, at one point pointing a gun at them, prompting all 4 officers to open fire, killing Jessup. At the time, Jessup's brother claiming he was never armed and ran out of fear.
So he's scared.
At the scene, investigators say officers recovered a handgun with an extended magazine. Now, we're also learning they discovered Jessup was wearing an ankle monitor, but officials not confirming why. Court records show in July 2017, Jessup led officers on a pursuit, hitting a 14-year-old on a bicycle and several other cars before being taken into custody. From his car, officers recovering suspected heroin and money. Months later, court records show officers searched his family's home in Baltimore County, recovering a trace amount of heroin. His trial in this case rescheduled for the end of this year. The Attorney General's office now handling the investigation into the actions of the officers. Investigators reviewing interviews and any video obtained, including footage from the officers' body-worn cameras. Footage Baltimore police confirm will be released to the public. Now, BPD has not said when that footage will be released. As for the officers, I'm told they're being placed on administrative duties pending the result of the Attorney General's investigation. This, of course, is standard procedure. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, turning our attention to the weather out there. Check this out, a time lapse of rain moving across Baltimore about an hour ago. Skies darkening quickly before those showers moved in. Here's Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers. Jonathan, the day started off beautiful and just changed into this.
Yeah, that HD camera shot there at the Inner Harbor just really turning gray fast, and then some of those showers, and that's actually with a cold front, so a means to an end of the warm weather. Had, at least by my estimation, I checked all the hourly observations, 76 for a high temperature, which is 2 degrees off the record. There are some showers now, Severn to Lake Rivera, down to Severna Park, and across the bay to Chestertown, and then more down towards the district as you're heading down towards Capitol Beltway. There are some rain showers as well there, but those are moving south and east fairly fast. So I think it may be another hour or so of this with maybe some wet roads south and east of Baltimore, and then that's gone, and the cooler air is really setting up. We've already dropped down into the 60s. Rain cooled here in Baltimore. Winds variable at 3. And our humidity 73%. You see in the background, we've got plenty of clouds, and those clouds and spot showers will stick with us into the remainder of the evening hours, again, through maybe 6:30. By about 6:45, already down across the lower eastern shore, and then the cool air sets up. But this front that's coming through, this weather maker, it's not moving fast enough. As a disturbance rolls to the north, it's going to throw some moisture back at us when we're in the cooler air for tomorrow. Look at these temperatures. You're only in the low to mid 50s at best. In the morning looks wet, noontime wet. 1:45 you're getting the kids from school, potentially wet as well by 3 o'clock. That's starting to move south and east. And I think by the late afternoon, evening, you might start to see the showers move out and some brightening skies. Again, that's going to be late. And then as we head into the Saturday time frame, got to move my Veterans Day over, but that's 58 degrees and partly cloudy skies. Of course, again, Saturday is our Veterans Day. But Veterans Day weekend wraps up with 53. Ravens game on Sunday. And then it does look like it warms up nicely as we head into next week, although still a little cool for this time of year for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It does warm to the mid 60s by next Thursday, but sun-filled skies there.
Thank you, Jonathan. And let's return to Greenbelt, Prince George's County. Recapping, there is a verdict in the Marilyn Mosby trial.
That's right. She has been found guilty of 2 counts of perjury. We are waiting for her and her legal team to emerge from the Greenbelt courtroom. the federal courthouse there in Greenbelt, I should say. Also, we will hope to hear from prosecutors in this case as well, in terms of what they presented to the jury and why the jury did indeed believe the evidence against Marilyn Mosby.
Here they come. Here they
We're going
come.
to take a break and we'll be right back.
Here they come. Here they come.
We actually are going to
stay here for a moment.
We are told that Marilyn Mosby and her team are going to be walking out the courthouse in just a moment. And we don't know if she's going to speak or not, so we will just linger and see if that will happen.
There she is behind attorneys and others.
Mr. White, do you have any comment?
Any comment?
And that's
No
the public
comment?
defender.
Do you plan to appeal this?
I want to say to the people of Baltimore, anything.
I'm blessed. I have nothing else to say.
Ms. Mosby, were you surprised by the verdict?
Ms. Mosby, do you plan to appeal this ruling?
Mr. White, what are the next steps? This seems upsetting. Is this upsetting?
You can see there, Marilyn Mosby just got into her vehicle after not really addressing the media. The only answer we got from her was that she was feeling blessed, which is a very common phrase that we have heard from her throughout this entire trial. Each day we've asked questions and she just says that she's blessed. We tried to get some answers from her defense attorney, James Wida, the federal public defender, but you saw there he wasn't really taking any questions. We asked him if he planned to file an appeal, again, not answering any question. So it's really unclear what happens next here. We're still waiting to find out what's going on in terms of sentencing, and then awaiting a trial date for those 2 mortgage fraud charges that Marilyn Mosby still faces. And we expect that the verdict from this case will play into the mortgage fraud trial if and when we ever get a trial date for that. Marian Kai.
Mackenzie, it's such a contrast to how this all started way before even we had a trial date. We had different attorneys, this high-profile, high-priced legal team. They held press conferences. Marilyn Mosby went on national news programs and spoke out. And now, I guess it's not a big surprise. She's just, they're not talking, and clearly her public defenders aren't as well. It's just a big contrast.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major contrast. I mean, if you remember, her previous defense attorney, A. Scott Bolden, faced court sanctions because of the comments that he made on the courthouse steps at the federal courthouse in Baltimore. Made some explicit comments talking about these proceedings. And going back just a little bit further, talking about how quick Marilyn Mosby and her legal defense team were publicly saying that they were ready to take this to trial. She was not shy about talking about this case. She made public comments coming in and out of the courtroom for those various hearings for months leading up to this trial date. And now she is staying quiet. Her defense attorney hasn't said a word to the media throughout this entire trial. Just a very stark contrast to where we started this entire case almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Mackenzie Frost reporting live from the courthouse, the federal courthouse in Greenbelt. Mackenzie, don't go anywhere. As you can imagine, Mary and I will be joining you again momentarily to talk more about this case. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
And again, we are following the breaking news of the day. This is Marilyn Mosby just leaving the courthouse minutes ago, saying to our reporter out there that she feels blessed. She has been found guilty of 2 counts of perjury, a maximum sentence on each of those counts up to 5 years in prison.
Neither Ms. Mosby nor her defense attorney, federal defense attorney James White, would offer comments about the verdict at this point. Still don't have a sentencing date at this point, but we do expect, as Kurt Nachman has told us, an attorney not associated with the case, he expects Ms. Mosby and her defense team to appeal. But she got into that black SUV, that Chevy Tahoe, I believe, and left without saying anything about the verdict that was read today specifically.
That's right. Mackenzie Frost is at the courthouse and is there in case prosecutors come out and make a statement about their case today. So we will be following it closely.
Lawmakers returned to Annapolis yesterday to discuss the juvenile crime crisis impacting people across the state. It was the second of 3 meetings the Judiciary Committee has planned before session starts in January.
But many are crying out for help now, questioning if there is even time to wait. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Baltimore with a closer look at this issue. Maxine?
Well, Mary and Kai, the clock has been ticking as more and more people fall victim to juvenile crime across Maryland. It was September 13th that the State House Judiciary Committee, they first met to examine if the juvenile justice reforms passed last year are doing more harm than good. Yesterday, the committee met yet again, delegates questioning the Maryland FOP, the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, and the Juvenile Justice Reform Council on juvenile repeat offenders, often let off the hook due to their age with 0 consequences. But just in that time between committee hearings, Fox 45 has reported on a number of juvenile crimes. Political analyst John Deedy says people have no choice but to wait for change.
Citizens are going to have to wait because the legislature just doesn't want to do special sessions, and the governor can call them. The governor hasn't shown a sense of urgency to call a special session. It's not just getting a law passed, it's getting enacted, signed in the law, and then the process of the law taking place and being enforced. And that's where a lot of times these things take so long, and where for a lot of citizens, they feel there's a lack of sense of urgency.
Well, at that next hearing in December on the 5th, the committee plans to hear how other states across the country are grappling with the juvenile crime crisis right now. In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. And let's return to our big story of the day. After just 1 day of deliberation, a jury finds Marilyn Mosby guilty of perjury. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost is live in Greenbelt, and she joins us now.
Mackenzie, tell us the latest at the courthouse. Do you think prosecutors are going to come out and make any statement?
I anticipate they will leave the courthouse. I don't really expect them to say very much throughout this entire process. We haven't heard anything from federal prosecutors outside of the words that they have written in their briefs. And we know that this case has been briefed extensively over the last almost 2 years that this has been going on. I want to point out that the jury deliberated for about 6 to 6.5 hours today. They got the case yesterday just after 4:30. The judge Lydia Grigsby, read the instructions and handed over the case to them, but then they didn't do any deliberations yesterday. Instead, they came back this morning, arrived around 8:30 and started this process. Now, it was a pretty boring day this morning because there were no developments, no jury questions. We hadn't heard anything from anyone up until about 2:30, 2:45 when we had heard that there was a verdict and that it would be read at 4 o'clock. Now, we know we just saw Marilyn Mosby and her legal team leaving the courthouse moments ago. No one really saying anything. Marilyn Mosby says that she is blessed. We didn't hear very much at all from the federal public defender, James White. We are expecting a scheduling conference to be held in order to go over possible dates for sentencing. We know that she faces up to 5 years in prison for each of those 2 perjury counts. Historically, 5 years in prison is potentially not likely, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And we can't forget that there are still 2 more charges that she's facing. Again, that trial has yet to be scheduled for mortgage fraud. Mary, Kai.
All right, Mackenzie, thank you. Well, let's check back in with attorney Kurt Nachman with Ian Lawyers.
Kurt, thanks for staying with us. We know Marilyn Mosby found guilty of those 2 perjury charges. What comes next, and what is she looking at in terms of sentencing?
Right. So the next step for her team is going to be to file an appeal to the Fourth Circuit. She has an automatic right to appeal, and they can appeal any one of a number of issues that they've identified, particularly the things that they talked about on the reasons and the bases for their motion to dismiss that was orally argued earlier. In terms of sentencing, she's going to be sentenced based on the federal sentencing guidelines. It's going to be somewhere less than 5 years, obviously, because that's the maximum penalty for each count. And both the attorney teams are going to calculate the guidelines. There is a slight bit of nuance. The teams, the defense and the government may come up with separate calculations. It's more likely than not going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 21 months. That she's going to be looking at based on the sentencing guidelines, at least that I hand scribbled while we were on break. I would expect Judge Grigsby to go along with some sentence within the range of the guidelines that she believes are appropriate in the case.
A couple of things have been happening in the country. One is the federal government saying post-COVID, they discovered there was a lot of fraud out there. This, of course, dealing with something kind of related in a sense because it deals with Mrs. Mosby's, the equivalent of a 401k, but for a city entity. What message does this send again to public officials, particularly looking at a city of Baltimore, which has had a history of public officials being tried and convicted on a federal level?
I think it sends a message that, number one, you're not above the law. The law applies equally to all citizens in the United States. But number two, that, something that may be passed over or brushed aside if you're not a public official, if you make the decision in your life to be a public official, to have your life in the limelight, then you should expect to some greater degree of scrutiny to your both public and private behavior. And again, that no one is above the law.
Is another trial for mortgage fraud. I'm not sure if she is found guilty in that trial. We don't even have a date set, but what the sentencing guidelines are for something like that. Would they group those sentences together to run concurrently?
At this point, one of the things her defense team is going to do is sit down, because I think I've said it before and other individuals have said it publicly. The other case is the easier case for the prosecution to prove. It's a very paper-intensive case. And so the defense team is going to have to weigh what their options are and see what they can do to mitigate some of the damage that's been done based on having this jury trial.
Interesting.
If they want to, they can try to approach and ask for something involving either concurrent time or some sort of small amount of additional consecutive time based on the other case that's out there and pending. And that's a really, really significant hammer that's going to be hanging over Miss Mosby's head based on the sentence that she's facing in this case and then the likely outcome of the other pending mortgage fraud case.
All right, Kurt Nachman, thank you again for staying with us, helping us break down this case. I know you're going to be with us in the next hour as well, so thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And you can trust Fox 45 News to bring you the latest. We'll have more coverage throughout the evening and online at foxbaltimore.com.
You don't really expect to come out, your whole car be gone.
The wave of car thefts in Baltimore continues. Next, hear from a family whose car was stolen while they were at the Ravens game this past Sunday.
There's new information on a carjacking at the Odenton Shopping Center late last night. A man armed with a handgun threatened a 30-year-old woman, according to police, as she walked to a car. Police say the suspect stole her black Hyundai Elantra and fled on Annapolis Road.
Well, car theft's a serious issue statewide, especially in Baltimore City. The city on pace to see more than 10,000 stolen cars by the end of the month.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson joins us now after talking to a family whose car was taken while they were in town watching the Ravens game. It's a story you're seeing first on Fox. Amy?
Yes, Mary Kai, we're here in South Baltimore along West Hamburg Street, just a few blocks away from both Ravens Stadium and Camden Yards. And take a look at this. This is a clear indicator that this is a place sports fans know to come to park just a few blocks away from those sporting events. Today, an Anne Arundel County woman tells me that she and her dad parked here in this industrial part of South Baltimore for Sunday's home Ravens game. Her dad, she says, is a season ticket holder who drives in from Dorchester County on Maryland's Eastern Shore. But when they came out of the game to drive back home Sunday afternoon, she said her dad's 2017 Hyundai Elantra was nowhere to be found. Shattered glass from one of the car's windows was left behind in the parking spot here along the street.
You don't really expect to come out your whole car be gone. Definitely pay to park in a lot that's going to be like babysat by the people that you're paying, because there's, no matter where you park, it's not safe anymore.
Now, Jessica, Allen Hoskins, who you just heard from, shared this photo with me. Her dad seen in the distance near where his car had been parked. Another couple seen sitting along the grass here along West Hamburg as a white SUV sits with its back window busted out. Police confirmed that a Hyundai was reported stolen from this block on Sunday, but also telling me a second car, a Kia Sorento, was damaged on this block in an attempted car theft that same afternoon. And these crimes happening in BPD's Southern Police District. This district seeing the second highest rate of reported auto thefts in just the last 4 months, seeing more than 700 cars stolen just here in the Southern District. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Yesterday, the Baltimore City Council held a hearing to address the theft of cars.
That's right. Police say more than 38% of those arrested are juveniles. Many of them arrested multiple times for the same crime.
Only 2/3 of the suspects are reported to the Department of Juvenile Services, and we understand only 5% end up serving time in a DJS facility. The rest apparently receive probation, have charges pending, or have their charges dismissed. Now, the City Council was critical of those numbers, saying change is impossible without consequences.
Baltimore City, we are failing our young people. And if we're not getting the job right, and if they see that we're acting a fool, and we're not taking them seriously, they're not going to take us seriously.
We are having a crisis around young people that are committing very violent crimes, being arrested, and then not being fully held accountable.
Well, meantime, early this week, police revealed 68% of cars stolen in the city are Kias and Hyundais. In response, Kia is running a software upgrade center in the Baltimore area this weekend. The company will help install security software at Arundel Mills Mall Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 8 to 6 each day. The process is supposed to take about a half an hour. A first-of-its-kind campaign from Maryland's top federal prosecutor, the impact he hopes advertisements can have in stopping gun violence.
And although the evening commute began a wet one for some, I think as we head into the overnight hours, any of those showers taper, temperatures falling quickly through the 60s. We could have some more rain on the way, though. Maybe a good soaker tomorrow. I'm going to let you know where you're going to see it worst in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
And this is video of Marilyn Mosby leaving the federal courthouse in Greenbelt not long ago. Ms. Mosby was found guilty of 2 counts of perjury today by a federal jury. That verdict was read not long ago. We'll have more live coverage and new reaction coming up in about 10 minutes. In partnership with state and local agencies, an emotional gun violence ad is now being broadcast across numerous cable and digital platforms. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has more on who they want to reach and the message they hope it sends.
That would be the only thing I would.
Combating crime with a camera.
Right, right.
The Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office taking a novel approach to tackling gun violence with the launch of a new 60-second PSA.
T, what are you doing here?
A young girl receiving devastating news.
I'm not gonna be home, all right?
Capturing the emotional toll gun violence leaves behind.
It's a drama and an appeal to emotion. Bullets don't just rip through individuals, they rip through families, through households. They have huge impacts on those that we love.
The ad made in collaboration with Roca, a nonprofit offering wraparound services for at-risk youth.
That partnership is critical. We can't do it without each other.
Features U.S. Attorney Eric Barron and BPD's Chief of Criminal Investigations, Monique Brown.
It's authentic, it's a real thing.
Will you come with me, please?
I want to talk to you about T.
Both starring in roles that reflect their reality.
You don't get to say goodbye to your loved ones if they are murdered. We need to really get a deeper understanding of what violence looks like.
And as overall shootings and homicides finally start to decline in Baltimore City, it's a message specifically aimed at reaching our young people who this year are committing and falling victim to crime more than ever before.
It's very disheartening. It's not just some of the things that they may see on TV, games, or how they display themselves along social media or in their social networks, that when these events or incidents happen, they are long-standing. They don't just end at that moment.
One murder is too many. The more we raise awareness of how this impacts, the greater chance we have to bring change.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
For Sinclair Cares, humanitarian relief for Israel. That organization is a Red Cross affiliate providing medical aid for all people in Israel. To help, you can scan the QR code or go to sinclaircares.com. Coming up at 5 o'clock, we'll tell you what's next for Marilyn Mosby. We'll look ahead to the legal battles she's facing.
And we're tracking some showers this evening, but it looks like those dry out overnight. Some cooler temperatures rolling in, but maybe some more rain for tomorrow returning. I'm going to let you know how chilly it's going to be with that wet weather. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
It's mating season for deer, and that means you'll need to be a little more careful on your commute. This morning, we spoke with Jonathan Trudeau from Maryland's Department of Natural Resources on how to best anticipate and even avoid a collision.
What you want to do is you want to startle them. You want them to realize that you're coming at them. What happens when they see your headlights is the way that their eye is structured is they can't see, they can't sense that distance anymore. So if you can make some sort of a sound, you can flash your lights, that can help. But the best thing you can do is really just try to avoid it as safely as you can.
All right, yeah, I try to avoid them as best as I can, Jonathan, and I see him every night on the way home. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, and it's funny, they're here in the city as well. And, it's not just out in the country type thing. So you really have to be careful, especially around the parks and any of the green spaces. And it always seems like they come in groups, right?
Yes.
It's like if you see
one is crossing, there's another one
you better
on the
slow
way,
down, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
good point.
that patience and caution pays for sure. Some rain here from Edgemere to Greenhaven. Speaking of stopping distances, that's going to increase your stopping distances all the way down to Crofton, Mitchellville, Selby on the Bay, and then across to Kent Island and Rock Hall. So keep in mind you could have a little bit of travel trouble, especially south of the city now as you're heading down towards the Capitol Beltway and down 295. Could be a little bit of a rough commute for you here. And also may slow things down, so leave some extra time. That rain is quickly moving south and east, though, so as we head through the early evening hours, I think most of that will taper. That's the good news. Bad news is I think it's going to be probably back in a bigger way late night tonight into tomorrow. 68 degrees right now. Toyota Asian Harbor Skycam winds are variable at 3 miles an hour as a cold front rolls through with some of these showers and all these clouds. Temperatures are all in the 60s generally across the area. This is after highs, at least thus far. Looks like we hit 76. That's 2 degrees off of record high temperatures, and that's going to be the high for the day. Temperatures have been going on the fall with the rain. Now, north and west, you see the highs only made it into the 60s, and I think tomorrow we're probably going to be hard-pressed to get out of, yes, the 50s by tomorrow afternoon. The warmer weather is moving away with our latest weather maker. It's a cold front that's pressing through right now. That's why we have some of the showers. And then there's a disturbance that rides up that thing as it kind of gradually just drifts off to our south tonight into tomorrow. So especially tomorrow, that rain is going to move in, and the much cooler temperatures also going to be established. Look at all those 50s to our north and west. Say goodbye to the 70s, 80s type air that's just down to our south. So by about 5:30 p.m., follow the clock here. You got a few showers south and east of the city. By about 6:45 over the eastern shore. Maybe a patch or two of clearing tonight, and then, yep, the clouds thicken up once again. By 7:30 a.m., this computer model saying we're getting rain once again, and it looks like on and off rain through much of the day tomorrow, especially during the morning and midday. By about, say, 2, 3 o'clock, should be drifting south and east, so hopefully things getting drier for after-school activities, and then into the evening hours clears out. And actually, it looks like some mainly sunny, but much chillier days on the way for the weekend, at least compared to what we had today. Isolated showers for tonight, again early and again late. 46 for tomorrow. We're at 52 with lots of clouds, much cooler. Kind of a gloomy day with the on and off rain. Veterans Day 56. Fall chill on Sunday for the Ravens game, and a moderating trend back to about 60 as we head towards the middle of next week.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, there's no choice but to wait. How state lawmakers approach addressing juvenile crime and what some say will happen in the meantime. Marilyn Mosby found guilty of perjury. This is the video of her leaving court not long ago. Fox 45 News continues to break down the verdict.
Live from WBFF TV in Baltimore, this is breaking news.
Do you plan to appeal this?
I want to say to the people of Baltimore.
I'm blessed. I have nothing else to say.
Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby didn't address the media after she's found guilty of 2 federal counts of perjury, only saying she is, quote, blessed. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The verdict in her perjury case comes just one day after it was handed over to the jury. We have live team coverage tonight. In just a few minutes, attorney Kurt Nachman will join us live to weigh in on what comes next.
But we begin with Mackenzie Frost. She was at the courthouse all day and joins us live now with what happened inside court. Mackenzie?
Kaya and Mary, just about 6 to 6.5 hours of deliberation from the jury today, and that resulted in the 2 guilty verdicts for these 2 perjury counts that Marilyn Mosby was facing. Now, you remember that this entire trial started on Monday with opening statements, and then we heard testimony and very limited testimony from just a handful of witnesses, and then it was given to the jury yesterday. They got the case around 4:30 yesterday, went home and came back this morning and started those deliberations. We hadn't heard anything from anyone all day, just right up until we got word that there was in fact a verdict. Now, if you remember, this entire case started almost 2 years ago in Baltimore, and after back and forth for years with various filings, the trial was moved to Greenbelt. That was after the defense tried to get it moved to Greenbelt once before, but now it was here. This was a move from Marilyn Mosby's federal public defender, who thought that it would be a better opportunity for them to get a fair jury pool here in the Southern District of Maryland in this area. Now, during testimony and during this entire trial, we heard back and forth and really got a glimpse into Marilyn Mosby's personal finances. And this entire case hinged on whether the jury believed that Marilyn's travel business that she launched was in fact operational and was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. If you remember, the perjury charges were because she checked a box on a form in which she needed to fill out to withdraw money from her retirement account that claimed that she suffered a financial hardship from the pandemic. The defense team argued that's because her travel business couldn't operate during the pandemic, and therefore she suffered future losses. The prosecution argued that was simply a lie. They said her travel business was never operational, and we heard statements from her that she made in the public from 2020 telling the city of Baltimore that those travel businesses were a long-term venture and she had no plans on operating them while she was in office. Ultimately, now we have to wait and see what happens with those 2 other charges of mortgage fraud that she's facing. But today, the jury coming back with a verdict of guilty for Marilyn Mosby.
And Mackenzie, we know the next step in this case is sentencing. Do we know when to expect that and what Mosby is facing?
Right now, it's unclear when there will be a sentencing hearing. We're hearing that there will be a scheduling conference held potentially over the phone to talk about setting up a date for the sentencing. We know right now she's facing up to 5 years in prison for each of those perjury counts. It's unlikely she'll get the maximum, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And we did see the prosecution leave a little bit ago. They declined to make any sort of comments, and the spokesperson saying that's because of those 2 outstanding charges for mortgage fraud. But for now, we're live outside the federal courthouse in Greenbelt. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
All right, Mackenzie, thank you. Let's bring in attorney Kurt Nachman right now. Kurt, what's your initial reaction to the guilty verdict and your thoughts about what you heard Mackenzie just say as well?
Yeah, based on how the case came out and how the evidence unfolded in court, I'm not particularly surprised. The most damaging piece of evidence was that recording of Ms. Mosby's own voice, indicating that she wanted to figure out a way to get her money and get her money as quickly as possible. And so, you know, that hearing that person's own voice is always powerful evidence for a juror. And I think it was probably the linchpin in the government's case in this situation. In terms of where they're going to go from here, they're going to file an appeal. They're going to look at filing an appeal, and then they're going to think about, you know, with this other looming charge pending, how is that going to impact this case, and what can they do to mitigate damages for Ms. Mosby at this point?
And Kurt, as you saw, Marilyn Mosby leaving the courthouse without saying much to the media. That is in clear contrast from what we've seen from her and heard from her during her previous proceedings. Are you surprised she didn't say much today?
Hearing a guilty verdict read to you when you used to be a prosecutor has got to be an extremely humbling experience. And I imagine it would leave most humans at a loss for words.
Yeah. Kurt, so this trial is over, obviously, but there is another one, this one for Ms. Mosby is accused of making false statements on loan applications. What are your thoughts about that trial and that process?
Well, that case has yet to be scheduled, but it is undoubtedly an easier case for the government to prove. It's a very paper-intensive case, and it's literally whether or not you're going to check the box as to whether or not you know, when you go through and you sign it. You're a lawyer, you know, as a defendant, so you're presumed to read and understand contracts and documents. It's a much easier case for the government to prove, and so now her defense team has really got to circle up and figure out what direction they're going to take this from here and whether or not they're going to approach the government for a global resolution on these cases.
And what does this guilty verdict today mean for the future of Marilyn Mosby's law career?
The Maryland Attorney Grievance Commission is going to take a look at this. I would have no doubt that they're going to take an action to emergency suspend her law license. There is a process to go through that. The conviction is not final until 30 days after sentencing and after the exhaustion of any appeal. So they couldn't automatically suspend her at this juncture because the sentence itself is not final, but they may take action to move forward more expeditiously absent that final determination.
All right. Attorney Kurt Nachman. Kurt, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me.
We'll trust Fox 45 News to bring you the very latest. We'll have more coverage this evening and online at foxbaltimore.com.
Lawmakers returned to Annapolis yesterday to talk about the juvenile crime crisis impacting people across our state.
It was the second of 3 meetings the Judiciary Committee has planned before session starts in January, but many are crying out for help right now, questioning if there's time to wait.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Baltimore with a closer look at this issue. Maxine?
Well, Mary, one political expert I spoke with says people really have no other choice but to wait until lawmakers return to Annapolis for session in January. And in the meantime, inevitably, more people will fall victim to juvenile crime. The clock has been ticking as juvenile crime continues impacting communities across Maryland.
They need to stop making excuses. They need to start locking these kids up. They need to change the laws.
It was September 13th. The State House Judiciary Committee first met to examine if the juvenile justice reforms passed last year are doing more harm than good.
If a crime clearly has occurred, we should allow our officers to take action, and it's frustrating to the community that we cannot.
Head of the Department of Juvenile Services, Vincent Schiraldi, touted the decline in crime among Maryland's youth as lawmakers questioned whether the statistics are accurate. But after 5 hours of questioning, there was no commitment to change. Yesterday, November 8th, the committee met yet again.
Unequivocally, the state is failing those children. Do you see the juvenile system as a benefit? And where are the holes that are causing these children to repeat offend, sometimes multiple times on the same day?
Delegates questioning the Maryland Fraternal Order of Police, the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, and the Juvenile Justice Reform Council on young repeat offenders often let off the hook due to their age with no consequences.
I don't want kids getting arrested on back-to-back days, and we should be responding to them.
But just in that time between committee hearings, Fox 45 has reported on a number of juvenile crimes. November 2nd, police say a 12-year-old boy used a gun to rob a 31-year-old man of his bike. He was arrested and charged with armed robbery and taken to the Department of Juvenile Services. But within hours, he was released. And within 48 hours of his release, court documents show he was locked up again and charged with 2 more armed robberies. That same November day, police say a Baltimore woman was assaulted and robbed by 2 juveniles, the youngest 12 years old. Both released within hours from DJS.
The horrificness of youth crime is what's scaring a lot of people. The fact that it's so brazen.
December 5th, the committee will return for a 3rd hearing in Annapolis, but with each passing day, the crisis could grow worse. Political analyst John Deedy says people may have no choice but to wait.
Citizens are going to have to wait because the legislature just doesn't want to do special sessions, and the governor can call them. The governor hasn't shown a sense of urgency to call a special session.
And he says even once lawmakers return to Annapolis for session, the clock will still be ticking as people wait and see if any real change to the laws on the books may come.
It's not just getting a law passed, it's getting enacted, signed in the law, and then the process of the law taking place and being enforced. And that's where a lot of times these things take so long, and where for a lot of citizens they feel there's a lack of sense of urgency.
Now, at that next committee hearing in December, lawmakers will hear how other states across the country are addressing the issue. In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. Well, another major topic during the hearing, the rise in auto thefts across the state. In Baltimore City, car thefts by juveniles are up 166%. Several times at the hearing, a story uncovered by Fox 45 News about an 11-year-old connected to more than a dozen car thefts across the region and never facing charges due to the law was even brought up.
Do you agree that we should be looking at a change to the law to include auto thefts, or just keep things as they are?
I think the idea that we're going to reduce auto thefts by prosecuting 11-year-olds for when it happens, I don't see the link between the two things. And to me, that feels like a real stretch. And I think just generally, the idea that the only means for accountability is through prosecuting a kid, especially at that age, I think is where our imaginations need to be greater than that.
Well, coming up at 5:30, we bring you the story of a man who had his car stolen while attending a Ravens game. We also take a look at how these thefts could have major impacts on your insurance rates.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you'd like to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers and email addresses are on the screen.
Still ahead tonight, the car theft crisis impacting Ravens fans we just talked about, trying to cheer on the team. The latest coming up.
Family members of hostages taken by Hamas are in D.C. right now. I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C., what they're doing to get their family members freed and the faces they don't want you to forget.
And a round of showers moving south and east if you're going to spend the evening out for your Thursday. Temperatures from 70 or so at about 6 p.m. Actually, we're a little below that already, falling down to almost 50s by 9 p.m. Much cooler, and it could be wetter tomorrow. We're tracking another round of rain. My Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News has learned the identities of the Baltimore officers involved in the deadly shooting of a man earlier this week. Officials also revealing the 27-year-old killed in Southeast Baltimore was wearing an ankle monitor at the time of the incident. Alexa Ashwell joins us live in studio with the latest on this unfolding investigation. Alexa?
Yes, Mary, the Attorney General's office is handling the investigation into the actions of the officers. Tonight, those officers and the suspect officially identified as this investigation continues.
27-year-old Hunter Jessup shot and killed by police after investigators say he pointed a gun at them during an encounter here on Wilkins Avenue in Southwest Baltimore, November 7th. Tonight, the Attorney General's office identifying those officers as Officer William Healy, Officer Brittany Routh, Officer Justin Oliva, and Officer Brandon Colombo.
They warned the individual multiple times. They yelled to the individual multiple times to drop his weapon, drop his weapon.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley says the officers were part of the department's district action team and had approached Jessup while performing proactive patrol.
They saw something that made them believe that he was armed.
Jessup, Worley says, ran from the officers, at one point pointing a gun at them, prompting all 4 officers to open fire, killing Jessup. At the time, Jessup's brother claiming he was never armed and ran out of fear.
So he's scared.
At the scene, investigators say officers recovered a handgun with an extended magazine. Now, we're also learning they discovered Jessup was wearing an ankle monitor, but officials not confirming why. Court records show in July 2017, Jessup led officers on a pursuit, hitting a 14-year-old on a bicycle and several other cars before being taken into custody. From his car, officers recovering suspected heroin and money. Months later, court records show officers searched his family's home in Baltimore County, recovering a trace amount of heroin. His trial in this case rescheduled for the end of this year. The Attorney General's office now handling the investigation into the actions of the officers. Investigators reviewing interviews and any video obtained, including footage from the officers' body-worn cameras. Footage Baltimore police confirm will be released to the public.
BPD has not yet said when that footage will be released. As for the officers, I'm told they've been placed on administrative duties pending the result of the Attorney General's investigation. This is standard procedure. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
And we are tracking a weather maker as it brings some light showers for our afternoon and evening commute. You can see there from Annapolis down to Chesapeake Beach, there's a bit of rain. It's actually intensified a little bit right south of the Bay Bridge, and then a couple of showers and sprinkles that are right now over the central portion of the eastern shore. But again, those are kind of on their way out. So as we head through sunset, gradually a little bit of clearing perhaps moving in as they quickly drift. These rain showers do down to the south and east. Down south of Arnold and toward Easton. Now, as we zoom out, you'll see there's more rain that's loading up west of Nashville all the way back to about Dallas. That portion of the weather maker actually is going to be coming through tomorrow. So once we get into the cooler air, it looks like a rain kind of soaked day, if you will, just real gloomy and dreary for Friday. Right now it's 66, winds out of the west-southwest at 6 miles an hour, humidity 84%. Again, a gloomy shot on the Toyota Asian Harbor Skycam as our cold front drifts on through. We're at 66 Baltimore. Cooler numbers, not that surprising, off to the north, low to mid-60s and mid to upper 60s south. 76, the high temperature here in Baltimore. I just checked. We actually did get our official high end. It was 77, so up 1 degree from that, but nonetheless still 1 degree off of record high temperatures. So cooler weather really just perched off to our north today, and that continues to sweep east into tonight and tomorrow. So as this cold front continues its journey south, we'll see this moisture kind of trail up the front. And with the cooler air in place tomorrow, again, not that pretty of a day. There it is on Friday. Even so cold, there could be a little bit of wet snow mixed in over portions of mountainous West Virginia. That should be pretty quick out of here, though. The cool air won't be, but the system will be as we head on into the weekend and Veterans Day. So the future scan overnight. Showers moving south and east of Baltimore as we head through the sunset hours. Thereafter, maybe a patch or two of clearing, but the clouds will again increase overnight. And by tomorrow morning's rush into work, 7:30 a.m., there's on and off rain again. Looks like that lasts through the end of the commute. You'll need an umbrella here as well as at noontime or so for the kids going off to school or going out to recess. Probably going to be an indoor recess for tomorrow. That's my thoughts. And look at the temperatures. They go nowhere. Upper 40s and low to mid 50s at best. By about 5 to 6 p.m., though, On our Friday afternoon commute, things will begin improving, although roads may still be wet. I think we'll be on a drying trend. For tonight, 46. Mostly cloudy skies. Could see an isolated shower again next hour or two. And then again late at night, much cooler with on and off rain and drizzle tomorrow. Much better looking day, but cool on Saturday. Veterans Day, sunshine and 56, 51 for the Ravens game. And a chilly pattern as we head into early next week.
We continue to follow breaking developments. Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby found guilty of perjury, tracking the latest from the courthouse and breaking down what comes next. The president of Israel disputes reports of a potential deal with Hamas to free hostages being held in the Gaza Strip.
Whilst there are many people who are third parties who are sending optimistic messages to the newsreels, I'm saying outright, according to my knowledge, up till now, there's no real substantial information that is showing any real offer of any process on the table.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog does not make policy like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does, but he is briefed on the discussions and the intelligence. He tells NBC News there's no viable proposal from Hamas to free the estimated 240 hostages. He wouldn't say whether Israel's only option to recover them is by a military rescue. The U.S. is working with Israel and Qatar to propose a 3-day humanitarian pause that would let aid into Gaza and possibly release some of those hostages. Now, family members of the hostages are in Washington, D.C. right now, putting pressure on Congress to do more to bring their loved ones home. The National Desk's Angela Brown has their story.
I talked to Liron Berman, his brothers taken by Hamas. He wants to make sure their faces are not forgotten and the U.S. takes action.
Ziv on the bottom is the older of the two by 2 minutes, and Gali on top.
Gali and Ziv Berman, twins, inseparable, a shared love of European football and a good beer with their big brother Liron.
They are working and traveling and having fun.
They lived in Kibbutz Faraza in Israel, near the Gaza border. Liron describes life there like this.
It was 98% paradise and 2% hell.
Hell came October 7th. Hamas terrorists storming over the Gaza border.
The destruction, the blood everywhere.
Killing and kidnapping Israelis.
They were in the same neighborhood, not in the same safe room when they are abducted. But the sad reality is that kidnapped, it's better than funerals.
Liran and other family members of hostages are in D.C., putting pressure on U.S. lawmakers to do more. Doris Lieber's son, Guy, also taken.
We don't have a list of the hostages. We don't know their condition. I don't have anything. So I need your help.
Liran says lawmakers are listening.
We got very sympathetic from both parties. Both are telling us that they will do whatever they can.
The brothers' last contact? A message to their mom October 7th, the day of the horrific attack. Liran was planning to visit that day.
So you could have been there that day?
I was supposed to be there. Me and my family.
Liran is hoping his brothers are still together, imagining the moment they are reunited.
It will be the happiest day of my life. More than my wedding, more than the birth of my kids. It's like seeing them alive and together again. It will be the happiest day of my life.
Some families want the U.S. to put more pressure on Middle Eastern countries to release the hostages. Keep in mind, over 200 people were taken over 30 days ago. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
The Israeli government right now is demanding explanations from 4 media outlets regarding a report which questions their work with Gaza-based photojournalists during the Hamas assault. The Honest Reporting article claims photographers used by the Associated Press, Reuters, and the New York Times and CNN provided images taken as the attack was going on. AP and Reuters both deny having any prior knowledge of the attack and reiterated their role is to cover breaking news. CNN says it has cut ties with one of the photographers named in the report, even though it had no reason to doubt the journalistic accuracy of his work. Marilyn Mosby has been found guilty of multiple perjury charges, the fallout from the conviction, and the chances we could see her fight the decision. Plus, the rise in auto thefts in Baltimore City impacting visitors, how a Ravens fan fell victim.
Fox 45 News continues to follow that breaking news tonight. Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby is found guilty on 2 counts of perjury.
In the last hour, Mosby leaving the courtroom, barely addressing the media, just saying she is, quote, blessed.
Let's check back in with Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, who's been following this case from the very beginning. She joins us live from Greenbelt with the very latest and what comes next. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, we know the jury coming back after about 6 to 6.5 hours of deliberations, delivering the 2 guilty verdicts on those 2 perjury counts. Now, this case, as you mentioned, has been a long road up until this point. Remember that Marilyn Mosby was indicted back in January of 2022, and we have gone back and forth for many, many months now between these prosecutors to get to this point. Now, throughout this entire trial, we heard a lot of evidence about Marilyn Mosby's personal finances. We heard from an FBI forensic accountant who went almost line by line through her various accounts, talking about the fact that something that we had been reporting for many years, that Marilyn Mosby made more money in 2020 than she did in 2019. And that appears to be a key fact in this case, because Marilyn Mosby checked a box on a form when she withdrew money from her retirement account, saying she suffered an adverse financial consequence stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. The prosecutors say that was simply a lie. The jury, obviously believing what the prosecution outlined in their case, that's why they delivered this guilty verdict. The defense argued that Marilyn Mosby's travel business that she launched, the Mahogany Elite Travel, was in fact planned to be operational. She had every intention on running it as a women's retreat business, but then that was devastated during the pandemic. That's when her defense team say that she shifted to a travel for family retreat business. And again, those public statements came up during trial, the fact that she said that she had no intention on running those businesses. The defense trying to make the argument that future losses qualified Marilyn Mosby to withdraw those funds, obviously not sticking with the jury this time.
Yeah, key pieces of evidence, Mackenzie, included in the trial. Statements from Mosby saying she would not run her travel business. You were just talking about that while in office. And recordings of her actual voice asking about ways to withdraw the money from her retirement account. What can you tell us about how that type of evidence played a role in this verdict today?
Yeah, the jury and the entire courtroom during this trial heard several calls that Marilyn Mosby made to Nationwide. Nationwide is the financial institution that operates and manages the retirement account that she was trying to withdraw money in. And the jury heard Marilyn Mosby's voice several times asking various agents on the phone how she could withdraw her money. And that's key because before we even got to the trial and opening statements, it was litigated back and forth about whether she could call this money her money. Federal prosecutors argued that it wasn't her money, that while the money was in this retirement account, it was being held in a trust and really the property of Baltimore City retirement system, and therefore it was not her money. So the jury hearing these phone calls, I believe, really played a role in their deliberations, and we heard several times she was almost frantic and panicked in one of the calls that she made at the end of December of 2020 before the CARES Act expired on the 31st, trying to make another withdrawal from her account to get more money out. This comes after she already withdrew money back in May. And remember that this money she used that money to use for a down payment on the 2 Florida vacation homes that she later turned into rental properties. And that really gets into the 2 mortgage fraud charges that she is still facing. And that trial has yet to be scheduled. In the meantime, we're still waiting to find out when sentencing will take place. Marilyn Mosby faces up to 5 years in federal prison for each of those perjury charges. It's unlikely she'll get all 5, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. We're live outside the federal courthouse in Greenbelt. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. And trust Fox 45 News to bring you the very latest. We'll have more coverage this evening and online at foxbaltimore.com. Well, Baltimore City is inching closer to the grim milestone of 10,000 cars stolen this year. Between January and November 4th, police data shows 9,512 cars have been stolen citywide.
I guess you just never really think it's going to happen to you.
Well, now some Ravens fans are among the latest victims of city stolen cars. Fox 45's Amy Simpson has a story you're seeing first on Fox.
We're here along West Hamburg Street, just a few blocks away from the stadiums, and take a look at this sign. This is a clear indicator that sports fans know this is a place to come to park just a few blocks from those sporting events. Sunday started off as a great day for Jessica Allen Hoskins.
My son's almost 3, and this is the first time I've actually left him with anybody to go do something for, like, by myself or my own. And then it was like, and then the Ravens won. They played amazing.
The Anne Arundel County woman said it was her first time to a Ravens game in several years, taking in the game with her dad.
My dad has season tickets, so he goes every home game.
The father-daughter duo parking in this industrial section of South Baltimore, along West Hamburg Street, a go-to parking spot on game day.
And he's never had an issue.
Other fans, she says, had the same idea.
Yeah, the whole street was full. Like, that was literally the only spot because we got there a little later than normal.
But after 4 p.m., ready to start their journey back home after a Ravens win, Allen Hoskins said she knew something was wrong, even from a distance.
I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset him just in case it was there.
This is all that remained in their parking spot. Shattered glass. Her dad's 2017 Hyundai Elantra, nowhere to be found.
You don't really expect to come out, your whole car be gone.
Gone along with everything they'd left inside.
My purse, my wallet, my son's car seat. My dad had clothes in there. He had his wallet in there. So all of our IDs, bank cards, credit cards.
Police confirming a Hyundai was reported stolen near West Hamburg and Bayard Sunday afternoon. Also saying another car was targeted in the same area, a Kia Sorento. The suspects, according to police, were unsuccessful. Allen Hoskins sharing this photo, her dad in the distance, near where his car had been parked. Another couple sitting on the grass as a white SUV sits with its back window busted out.
I guess you just never really think it's going to happen to you.
The crime's happening in BPD's Southern Police District, the district with the second highest rate of auto thefts in recent months. Between July 9th and November 4th alone, the Southern District reporting more than 700 stolen autos.
It was Monday night. It was around 6:30. He texted me and said that they had found it wrecked.
Her dad's stolen Hyundai was recovered, but it's undrivable.
Ignition was popped and then the window was busted, but he said there was no front or back bumper.
Now her message for any fans planning to catch a game in the city.
Definitely pay to park in a lot that's going to be like babysat by the people that you're paying, because there's, no matter where you park, it's not safe anymore.
In South Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, amid fears over stolen cars in the city, Baltimore residents are also grappling with a surge in their insurance rates. Fox 45's Vincent Hill continues our team coverage with a look at the cost being passed down to victims.
At the city's impound lot on Pulaski Highway.
As of last week, we were experiencing a 227% increase in auto thefts.
Mayor Brandon Scott pointing to a troubling and costly trend for Baltimore City.
Prior to this change, owners of stolen vehicles had to pay $130 to $140 to cover towing costs. Under this new policy, the city has assumed the cost of the nearly $250,000 annually that is historically associated with towing fees and recovering stolen vehicles.
While that fee may be waived for recovered vehicles,
60%.
Only 60% of the over 9,000 stolen have been recovered. If the other 40% need to be replaced, the cost.
Let's take an average vehicle cost of $20,000, right? That's $200 million worth of new vehicles purchased in Baltimore City.
That's millions of dollars passed on to the victim. According to Hayward Howard, Senior Vice President of Murray, Dumley & Parr Insurance.
We're seeing average increases probably somewhere in the 10 to 12% range. And there's no expectation based on what we're being told that the increases in premium are going to subside.
It's a concern Fox 45 has heard from several victims of car theft.
I was a victim once with my car being stolen. I was a victim with the insurance company.
It's frustrating, I have to go through all this other extra financial situations with it, so it's really frustrating.
It's not so much my car was stolen, it was all the other stuff.
And it's not just increased premiums. Some insurance companies deciding not to underwrite a policy in Baltimore altogether.
As insurers decide to leave certain jurisdictions altogether, you're creating an environment that is lacking competition.
And a lack of competition, raising prices for those looking to be insured.
Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Progressive and State Farm are no longer insuring Hyundai and Kias in most major cities because of this rash of thefts of those cars.
Kia America is running a software upgrade center in the Baltimore area this weekend. The company will help install security software at Arundel Mills Mall Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 8 to 6 each night. Kia says the anti-theft software has already been installed in nearly 1 million cars across the country, and the process, they say, takes about a half hour.
If you have a stolen car story or know somebody who's been impacted by a spike in auto thefts, we want to hear about it. Just scan the QR code there on your screen. Tell us what happened or send an email to news@foxbaltimore.com.
Well, next year, apparently, you'll be able to swim in the Inner Harbor. The Waterfront Partnership and city leaders announced the Harbor Splash. It's an event where about 18 people 18 and up, 18 years of age and older, will be able to get into the harbor while supervised by water safety experts. While the harbor is not ready for everyday activities, organizers say this event is a massive step towards a swimmable Baltimore harbor.
After generations of neglecting our streams and harbor, we expect a healthy amount of skepticism too. But this is just the beginning. We want to see other events like triathlons, swim meets, stand-up paddleboard races. We're so excited to see in the renderings for the new harbor place, they included a wave pool in the Inner Harbor. And one day we may even see a beach.
Certainly a lot of optimism. The Waterfront Partnership also highlighted data from its annual report card. That report found a 97% reduction in sewage flowing into the harbor in the past 5 years. That's good to hear. Trash wheel garbage collection is going up. We know about that. And, of course, an improvement in the harbor's bacteria scores. Now, healthy harbor leaders believe these are all indicators the city is on its way to a swimmable harbor, but they didn't provide an estimate as to exactly when that will happen.
Thinking people will be wearing wetsuits if they do that. Well, the new FBI headquarters will be built in Greenbelt. The site is planned roughly 13 miles northeast of Washington, D.C., where it's currently located. The consideration process has taken more than a decade. Virginia was vying for the headquarters as well. The General Services Administration says Greenbelt is the cheaper option and offers the greatest transportation access to FBI employees and visitors. It's unclear when the project will start.
Coming up after the break, another government shutdown looming. The new tactics from lawmakers to avoid disaster.
I'm Dee Dee Gatton in Washington. In a new survey, Americans weigh in on the state of their financial situation since the 2020 presidential election. We break down the findings and key factors for voters as we head into 2024.
And a round of showers sliding south and east, which means for any maybe runs or jogs that you have planned this evening, not bad. Temperatures generally going to be in the 60s with skies partially clearing. I'll let you know when a soaking rain could come back in, though. That's up in my Weather Authority forecast.